Welcome everyone. We have a couple of hopefully joiners from Brisbane or Sydney. If you are the first time coming to this meetup, our meetup group is built and grow around the idea hands-on is better than presentation. In today's meetup, Ben is going to show us hands-on different security practices in AWS. Again, we are recording this, and we will put the recording into the YouTube and link into the meetup group. Apart from that, thank you very much for everybody in the organizers for supporting us and then pushing and growing the meetup. Yeah, we are almost 4,000 people now, which is an impressive number, and we have 3 different areas: Brisbane, Sydney, and in Melbourne. Other couple of things: if you want to help or volunteer, if you want to volunteer, we have different the gifts for writing blog page, for example, for today's session, how you feel about the session, etc., or any other volunteer task that you might think of. So reach out to the organizers and let us know if you want to contribute. Without further ado, I guess, Ben Potter, if you can share your video and your screen.
Yes,
that will be all.
You should have my video already.
Now it is, yes.
Yep, cool. Yeah, I just had to talk to get the voice focus. Yeah, so hi everyone, and thanks very much for the invite, and thanks for having me today. Hopefully I'm gonna give you a lot of insights, especially if you're just getting started in AWS or you need to sharpen up some of those security tools that you have in your belt. My day job is actually leading the best practices for well-architected security as part of the WellArchitected framework. If you haven't heard of it, I'm going to throw up some links at the end and you can go and check it out. So my day job is basically curating all that content, keeping service teams honest that they're doing the right thing in terms of presenting the services to our customers, and also being a bit of an evangelist for security. So that's my day job. What I'll do, I'll just turn off my video because it freaks me out when I'm just like looking down at the screen.
Ben, sorry for interruption.
Yeah,
I forgot to mention that we have some swags by the end of the presentation. Please hang out because we have some JetBrains and AWS t-shirts that we are planning to.
Oh, cool.
So
awesome.
Don't drop off too early. All right, thank you.
Yeah, I'm starving hungry for dinner, so I'll see how my belly goes in waiting. So what I've done is I'm going to start off with a couple of slides of just the foundations. So you should be able to all see my screen now. And this is taken straight out of the well-architected guidance. And one of the recommendations is separating all your different workloads into different AWS accounts. So for example, if you're running a production, public website, that should be separate to your development environment. So having that separate account gives you that isolated boundary, and the AWS account is the best boundary for that. Now, the best way to organize all of that, in fact, the only way to really do it is using the organization service. So if you're not already using it, go and check it out. It's a free service and it allows you to group accounts by function into organizational units. And more importantly, allows you to apply what we call guardrails to those accounts. And I'll go into that detail later. So I'm just going to build out a sample multi-account scenario, starting off with the organizations as the container. Now, there's always going to be an organization management account. So that management account actually runs organizations. So that's the top level of the hierarchy, right? And that management account cannot have any of those guardrails applied to it. So it's really important you only use that management account for the absolute minimum necessary things, because none of those guardrails apply to it. And I'll touch on more of the guardrails later. Now, I've got a few slides of screenshots coming up after of using the Control Tower service. So Control Tower is a fairly new service, and it's pretty mature now, and allows the automatic creation of all those guardrails, all of the logging capabilities, and automatically create some key accounts for you as well. So I guess my recommendation is, if you're just running like a personal account, like for testing stuff, you can have a play with Control Tower, but it's going to have a few dollars of cost each month associated for applying, KMS keys and some of the control services. Otherwise, if you're running production accounts for an organization and you're not already using Control Tower, definitely go and check it out. And also in this management account is where you use the single sign-on service. So the biggest tip that I give to new customers and new AWS users is to not use an IAM user and not use an access key with that IAM user or the root user. So throw them away, delete them all, move off of them, move on to more scalable. Also a free service is the single sign-on service. And I even use the single sign-on service for my personal accounts. So I've got a bit of a demo I'll do after, but it makes it a lot easier to get into accounts. It's a lot safer in using roles instead of having an IAM user. And it still allows us to have multi-factor authentication turned on, but it allows us to jump around to the different accounts a lot easier. And if you're using the CLI, it also integrates with the CLI. So you're not having to create an IAM user and copy and paste those dangerous access keys that you could accidentally put out there somewhere on the internet. That will get you in some real trouble. So next up, and this is a recommendation for an organization that's running production workloads, not necessarily a personal account, but would be to have a log archive account. So this log archive account you can treat as a worm drive. So you have S3 buckets with your most critical logs, and you could even put in your most critical assets in there as well. So none of the other accounts have access to this except read-only access from the audit account that I'll explain through in a second. Now, this log archive account, if you're using Control Tower, is actually created for you. And the CloudTrail service is automatically configured for you as well. So that's all done for you. Next up is an operations account. You can call this your DevOps account, whatever you want to call it, but this is where you run all your shared tooling. You might like to have security tooling separated from other tooling. That's fine. It just depends on the size of your organization and the teams that you're running in. But this is where you should centralize your operations tools. And you can see there, I've got our WellArchitected tool. I've got services like GuardDuty and Security Hub, Config and CloudFormation, as well as Trusted Advisor. And I'm going to go through a bunch of those shortly. And next up, we have our development account. So this is where we run our actual application or applications for development, and then a production one. So this is sort of the minimum recommendation for a small organization that has production workloads in AWS. And you can choose to run it for personal use if you want. Guys, should I stop there for any questions, or should I just keep running through? I can't work out how to see the chat at the same time.
We'll help you and moderate the chat if somebody does ask somebody.
Okay.
But anybody who wants to, you can come off mute and just ask your question out loud, or you can feel free to type it if you want to as well.
Yeah, go for it. Cool.
I have a question.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
These worker accounts, workload accounts, we generally have especially between the operation accounts and the AWS account. And we generally need to do cross-account access for, let's say, glue catalog, for example. Glue catalog is in one single place, I would say, in the operations account in our case.
Yeah.
These organizations allows us to do easily manage this cross-account access for, let's say, S3 buckets. Question one. And the second is we have multiple departments. It's a finance company, and every department has duplicates of development and production. So department one has a development and production, department two has a development and production, and they need to cross-access each other's data as well. So is there best practice for multiple development account and multiple production account as well?
Yeah, so I'll tackle your first question first around the multiple accounts and the cross-account access, which sort of ties in with the second one. Really, that depends on how you need to access the other accounts. The best way to do it would be through the IAM service roles and have a trust set up with those other accounts. But again, it depends if everything's authenticating back to a centralized identity provider, whether you're using Active Directory or something else, or a partner, you can tie it back to that, and then that directory service will broker the different access. But if it's simply something accessing S3, then you could use an S3 resource-based policy and trust your other accounts, or in fact, trust your organization, which you can do in an S3 policy. So I guess the answer is, unfortunately, it depends. In terms of how many accounts you have, it depends on how you want to manage them and how much time and the security sensitivity. So if you had one development account with everything in it, and that's how you want to run and everyone's happy with that, that's great. But if you're going to be dealing with sensitive information in production, then you want to split those sensitive workloads, those sensitive applications out into different accounts based on that level. So if you're running, a finance application, production dealing with financial data, you definitely want to keep that isolated from any other workload. Sorry about the vagueness. It's it depends.
Yeah.
A great question. Thanks.
No, that was clear. Thank you very much. At least it made sense to me. Thank you.
Great. I'll move right along. So because I'm a little bit conscious of security, and if I showed you the whole control tower console, it will show all my personal email addresses. I've gone to using screenshots. So sorry, guys. So here's a screenshot of a control tower that I've got set up on my personal account. And you can see here, this is just the central dashboard. And we already have 20 preventative guardrails in place. And we've got a couple of organizational units that are configured in the organization service. And I've got 3 accounts in here. And you can see that I'm all compliant. So what we can also do, if we dive into the guardrails, we can see all the guardrails that are mandatory. So they are the ones that are applied by default by the control tower service. And we can see others that are, elective. So we can go through that list, and there's many, many in the list. We can go through that list and choose to apply them depending on, our risk appetite, how sensitive what we're running in our accounts is. So if I dive into one of these, so this is a required one. So this is mandatory, and you can see the status up there on the top right is enforced. And this particular guardrail is disallowing the deletion of the log archive. So anything to do with those S3 buckets created by Control Tower, it's going to disallow that access. So really, really powerful. And it's going to do this at the account level. So of course, as I mentioned before, that management account at the top of the hierarchy, you can do anything you want to it, pretty much. It's those subordinate accounts under that are managed by Control Tower and the organization service. This is one of my favorite guardrails as well. And And the guidance here is strongly recommended. So you can simply disable SSH for internet access. So really powerful.
A question for you, if you don't mind. One of the things I was setting up last year was trying to bring an organization to ISO 27001. Now, those guardrails look a lot like the recommendations you'd see going to the IT security framework like that.
Yes.
Is there a correlation? Like, is there a way of working out which controls would relate to which things in something like that standard? Or is there an automatic connection, or is that something you'd have to work through the standard and go through here and join the dots?
Yeah. So short answer is you gotta make your own risk-based decision, and you might have other frameworks that you need to comply with as well, not just the ISO. But you find there's all these standard controls that are very similar across everything, no matter whether it's a well-architected recommendation, ISO, PCI, and any of the others out there. So it's I'd say have a look around and see what's out there, but I can't think of anything off the top of my head that's really going to help you.
Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, there's the fairly new AWS service called Audit Manager, but I haven't played with that enough in determining the different, those different controls, but it does help you audit to different compliance frameworks. So I'd say probably start with Audit Manager and go from there. Cool. That was the end of my slideshow. Sorry, here's a example policy for the organization service. So we can simply deny the creation of an access key in IAM or the creation of a user. And again, this is one of those built-in control tower guardrails.
There's nothing on there that shows that it's a guardrail policy.
No, you're right. I've shortcutted the policy for simplicity.
But it normally would have something on there when they get you. So as soon as you set up one of those guardrails, you'll be able to see that it's a guardrail rule that's been applied or policy that's been applied.
Yes, that's right. Yep. Yep. So what I want to do, I've jumped into the console. We've actually got a bunch of, where are we? WellArchitected Labs. So if you go to WellArchitectedLabs.com, and of course we have our pillars of WellArchitected, in which security is one of them, and you'll find a number of different labs on the other pillars. The cost optimization ones are incredibly good. So of course, security ones are my favorite, and I've written most of them. We have a bunch of, sorry, I'll just start at that level. I'll just zoom in for those on little screens. So we have some foundational ones. No. Sorry, I'm just in the test environment. So it just showed me all the cost ones under security. So thank you for that. Some basic configuration there. But what I want to start with, the first thing, it's really important to get, detective controls. And this one I updated today because I just updated the CloudFormation template. So it's really important to get a base level of logging and monitoring set up in your environment just to know what's going on out there. And this lab will help you running in a single account structure. You can run it across multiple accounts, but the better way to do that is using Control Tower. So what this is going to do is enable the CloudTrail service, the config service, GuardDuty, and Security Hub. So those sort of the key detective or detection services that you should enable at a minimum. And running the CloudFormation template, simply follow the bouncing ball, download the template, spin it up in the console, and you will get something like this. So I've already ran it earlier today in this account. And I've just called it detective controls. So what it's going to create for us is a whole the buckets for the CloudTrail service, config service, GuardDuty, it's going to sign me up to GuardDuty alerts through an email. It's not the most scalable thing, but it's good for a little personal account or a demo. And of course, the Security Hub service. So what I'm going to do is use this to pivot and show you the different services and the ins and outs of them as a starting place. And then I'll move on to the other parts. So the most critical one is CloudTrail. So CloudTrail has a built-in event history for 90 days by default for free in the console. The only problem is you can only filter in this console here and download the events in CSV or JSON, and it's only for the last 90 days. So if you're trying to find out who deleted my instance 100 days ago, who's going to get in trouble for it, then you can only go back the 90 days. So what we want to do is create a trail. I've actually got two trails here. I've got one that's on by default because I'm using a temporary account. And then I've got the one that I just created earlier today. And you can see I've got, and that CloudFormation template in the lab will do all of this configuration for you. So it's going to create a CloudWatch logs group, and it's going to create a S3 bucket. So I've actually got two locations. The reason I've got the two is mainly for demo purposes to show that it can go to two different places. But also I like querying logs in CloudWatch logs because it's really simple syntax and it's really quick. If I had to query, whoops, didn't mean to do that. If I had to query it all in S3, I'd have to use something like Athena, and it might take me 5-10 minutes to get started with it. Whereas CloudWatch logs, I can just jump straight in and run my query in there using insights. And there's actually built in, where are we? CloudWatch logs group. And there's actually built-in queries that we can use for CloudTrail. So a number of login tries. You can see it's just very similar to SQL syntax. Run that query and we can find out what we want. So there's logins over time per service, per region. So simple as that. So you can see if you're dealing with a security issue, then having CloudTrail turned on, using CloudWatch really simply here, it's going to save you a whole bunch of time. You've gotten straight to the root cause of the problem, having a look through your logs really quickly. Of course, you've got to enable it in the first place. You can't retrospectively go back more than 90 days. I'll pause there for any questions. Cool. We actually have a more advanced lab that I created some time ago, which is for doing incident response, very basic, using CloudTrail logs. And there's some example CloudWatch logs insights queries that you can use here. So access denied attempts, if you want to see what a particular access key is done, particular source IP, and some other actions in there. So go check out that lab. That's under the advanced labs. All right. My other favorite critical core security service is GuardDuty.
Ben,
yeah,
we move on. In our organization, we need to create our reports mostly using Python or AWS CLI. We can make those calls through AWS CLI to CloudWatch, right? And then process it eventually locally.
Are you talking about getting credentials from CloudWatch, or are you talking about running queries on CloudWatch?
Running queries of CloudWatch, so we can, programmatically do all those queries.
Yes, you can do that for sure. Yeah. You can use the CLI or the API, use the Python Boto SDK and query it direct. In fact, I have a lab. Where's it gone? I actually have a lab on using Jupyter Notebook, but I don't have any screenshots on it, I don't think. No, I don't. But Jupyter Notebook, of course, is Python merged with Markdown, and it's going to help me run those queries. So that's kind of like an example that you could use for that to get started.
That's great. Thank you.
Awesome. So this is a brand new account, and I haven't done anything naughty in here yet. So GuardDuty hasn't found anything. So GuardDuty is an intelligent threat detection service. It looks at multiple different sources of information. So it looks at my CloudTrail logs, even if I haven't enabled CloudTrail. It will look at VPC network flow logs, even if I haven't enabled them. And it will also look into S3 access requests as well. And you can see there's the S3 option. If you've previously set up GuardDuty, then go in and make sure you've enabled S3 protection. What you find is, and I'll just go to the settings, and I'm going to generate some sample findings here. So this is going to give me a whole bunch of example stuff. And if anyone got this many findings at once, I'd be calling for help. Quick help. You can see these are all flagged as sample. So let's dive into one of these. So you can see high severity, unauthorized access to S3 from a Tor IP address. So Tor anonymizing network, pretty high risk that somebody is trying to do something wrong. And you can go through and you can get a lot of information out of that. Again, somebody's trying to run a pen test. Someone's trying to run reconnaissance using a port scan, and it will link through to the instance ID. So it automatically does all of the correlation of IP addresses, what instance was running on that IP at that point in time, and it's going to save you all that time in log diving. It just comes straight up there, and we can even link through with the new detective service. So I haven't enabled the detective service in this account. I'm just keeping it simple demo today from timing, but detective will help you go even further with an incident response event and dive into the logs and cross-correlate multiple data sources. So it's really, really powerful. But you can see here that GuardDuty is really good at giving me just that one pane, single pane of glass. And in this example, it's going to send me an email alert. In the GuardDuty docs, there's also examples on sending Slack alerts as well. So you can get Slack notifications straight through to your team of anything going wrong, or any security findings, I should say. The other one I've enabled in that CloudFormation template is Security Hub. So Security Hub's that single pane of glass of visibility that will bubble up. You can see here GuardDuty findings, Inspector is another service for vulnerability management, and a number of other services. So it's that single pane of glass. But the thing I like about Security Hub the most is it will go and check my account for all the misconfigured things I've got against the security standards that I've set. The security standards by default are the foundational best practices by AWS and the Center for Internet Security foundations as well. And of course, I can enable others. And another standard one here is PCI. So if we drill down and view results, I can see here I've got my score, ensure no root account access keys exist. Now, I don't know why this temporary burner account I created has access keys en route, but you can see there it's a really good example. And you can see I should go after my most critical things first and then filter down into the low criticality ones. So when I meet with a new customer and they're like, Ben, where do I start? I'm like, okay, let's just enable Security Hub, at least in your production account. You can run it at the organization level and put it through multiple accounts. but it will give you that really quick insight into what you need to fix first. Pause there for any questions. Right, I feel like I'm just bashing everyone with services, but this was all going to be about services, and most of these are either free or incredibly cost effective. So I'll keep going along. So the config service records our configuration changes over time and is actually used by other services like Security Hub. And you can see here, I've got a number of different resources that it's found. And I can drill down and see, let's go into a subnet. So where CloudTrail records who did what and when, and those details of like an audit log, config records the configuration history over time. And you can see here, this is a pretty boring one because there has actually been no configuration history. It's just been recorded there. I can also go on and apply conformance packs. And I don't have any conformance packs there as an aggregator. I need to actually configure them here. And what a conformance pack will do is similar to Security Hub, it will list all the different things, configuration standards, and verify what you're running to those configuration standards. You can also upload your own. And there's a bunch out there that are all open sourced. And we actually have some security pillar ones here. And you can actually download that and customize it yourself. So config, really, really awesome service for that configuration history. So that rounds out those detective services that I think are really core. Any questions before I keep going on?
No questions at the moment, Ben, but it's I'm certainly finding it useful, and people still here, so it must be working. We've still got plenty. We got plenty of participants here.
Yeah, 55 people, very impressive.
Cool. So another lab I've got that I did some time ago was I got asked by so many customers, like, what's the best way to set up a VPC with everything turned on? And I was like, well, the answer is CloudFormation. And nobody was willing to make a CloudFormation template this complicated. So I went and did it. It took quite some time, like getting my hands dirty. So this is what this CloudFormation template spins up. So it's a best practice to utilize multiple availability zones. So this template, of course, is coded to run in 3 availability zones, which we have in most regions around the globe now. It configures one VPC, and it has multiple layers divided by subnets. So starting at the top, we've got an ALB, so application load balancer subnet. And that's utilized by another lab that will plug in an ALB to that layer. Now, the reason we do this is we want to, what I'm recommending here, to keep them separate, because we want a separate route to the internet depending on what our application is running, depending on what we're doing. We don't want everything in our VPC to have a route out to the internet. And that minimizes the risk of data exfiltration. We have a NAT gateway here. We could also use the newer network firewall in this shared subnet. Now, this subnet, or this group of subnets along on this horizontal layer here, does have a route to the internet. However, when we go down into the private subnets where our application runs, and this is where we put our instances, containers, Lambda functions, this is where we're going to run all of them. If they need access to the internet, that's when we can run through either network firewall or NAT gateway to get filtered access out to the internet. It also means there's no way they can accept incoming connections. The only way things can come into this, and this is obviously geared up for a web application or something that runs behind an application load balancer, is through the ALB layer. So it must go through an ALB or some other sort of network appliance running at that top layer. Now I've got a database group of subnets down the bottom. They do not ever have any internet access. They access the services they need to, like, archiving to S3 and other different APIs for AWS through these endpoints. And the same with our application layer. We're going to use endpoints. And endpoints are like a virtual networking route, I guess you'd call it, that runs at the subnet layer. So we can basically get out to a particular AWS service or customize our own services using that VPC endpoint. Now, here's one I prepared earlier. So in this CloudFormation stack, we've got VPC. So I've got a prefix here of web app 1, because this is my web application number 1. It's pretty simple. I like to use prefixes because it means when I'm creating policies like IAM policies, I can use a prefix for an application and not cross over other applications if I'm running this, different things in the same account. So that's why I like to use prefixes. Everyone's got their own name strategy, but this is why this CloudFormation template took me so long to make. It's got a whole bunch of resources. But more
Ben,
yeah.
There was one question from Andre. He asked whether that also exists within CDK. I guess because a lot of people are starting to shun CloudFormation and go towards CDK where possible. So given that you like hands-on.
Look, thanks so much for offering. It's open source, so just do a pull request. I'll approve it, and I'll give you a big thanks on LinkedIn and Twitter.
There you go, Andre.
Yeah,
thanks so much for volunteering, Andre.
Oh, that was really fast turn. I was going to ask one thing though. If your private subnet for DB databases don't have any connectivities, how do you patch them? How do you update them, etc.?
Yeah, so if you're using the RDS or Aurora service, which this example is, that's done in by the management service itself. So that's looked after by AWS for you. So that doesn't actually need to get out to the internet or any other endpoints for patching. If you're running your own database service, then you'd need to give it to a route, at least to a NAT gateway or network firewall, and keep an eye on that traffic. But again, it's something like if you're only going to patch, well, if it only needs to access the outside world for patching, why don't you just automate a script that actually opens up the route and maybe also the egress of the security group for that period of time that it's doing its patch. So it's not always sitting there left with an outbound route to the internet in case something does happen and somebody tries to get data out to somewhere it's not allowed to.
Yeah. Actually, it's smarter. I was thinking you create an EVE AMI and then deploy it, but no, yours is better. Good.
Oh, thanks.
Like it. Thank you. Do you have the CDK version of that one?
Thanks, Andre, for volunteering. No, I actually got some feedback last year that I need to do the, not CDK, it was Terraform version of this. And I said the same thing to them and they never did it. You can see here, I've got all of the different, I don't know why my default VPCs are still there, but you can see I've got all my subnets here. And I've got the ABC. You can easily see it's shared ALB, DB, app. What I've also done is network ACLs are a little bit tricky and time consuming. So in this template, I've actually got all the network ACLs already prepared for you. So network ACL is a really good additional layer of network control that applies at a subnet layer in this case, and adds on to and provides a defense in depth onto a security group. And I like to recommend this where you need more of a trust layer than just a security group. So if I'm a new dev and I accidentally open a security group to the world, then my catch configuration is the NACL. And of course, there's other moving parts to that, but this is where the NACL can play in here. You can see here, I've also got IPv6 capability for this VPC as well. Right. Also wanted to show you the route tables.
Ben, there's a question.
Yeah.
You want to take it?
I'll read it out. I was just about to say the same thing. Dahan jumped in. So Prakash asked, aggregating the AWS config, GuardDuty, and CloudTrail logs to a management log archive account, can that be done easily for multiple regions?
Yes and no. So CloudTrail, yes. So CloudTrail has a little tick box that automatically enables multiple regions to go through, whereas the other services do not. So GuardDuty is regional, as is config. They will only go through for that region which they're enabled. My advice there would be to use Control Tower, because Control Tower, you select what your primary region is or your allowed regions, and it will actually disable the use of all those other regions in those accounts. So you kind of don't need to worry about those other regions. Otherwise, you can take either the template that I used and modify it. Otherwise, there's out there that are on the internet that you can use in official docs as well, that are designed to use stack sets, and stack sets will apply to all those different regions and make your life a lot easier there. But I'd go back to Control Tower. It's just so much easier to enable that and get that all back to the one place. Yeah, good question. And now I've worked out how to actually turn my questions on while screen sharing, so I can see them now. Thanks, everyone. You can see here I've got all the different routes. And if I click on one, you can see my route association. And I've got my route through my NAT gateway by default. I've also got my endpoints. So I've only got a few endpoints on by default because endpoints do cost some money. And if you're splitting this up for personal use, you don't really want a $20, $30 bill at the end of the month just for trying out a new VPC. So this is where I've got very limited endpoints in there. Right, so what I've also got is a sample WordPress application. I haven't configured out any access to that endpoint URL. I just wanted to show you the actual configuration that we're going to do for this. What this is doing is actually creating, sorry for jumping around here. So this is creating auto-scaled, load balanced instances. And in my case, I've just got the one. And again, I've used this prefix web app one. I've got my application load balancer that it configures for me. I've got my listener there. I'm only using port 80 because I don't have any certificates configured. And I have my security groups. So my security group on my load balancer itself. And I'm only allowing my current public IP address, or that subnet anyway. And you can see the instance itself is only allowing 80 and 443. There's no SSH access, because for SSH, I don't want to SSH, I want to use Systems Manager. So Systems Manager reduces the risk of using SSH because it just uses a built-in agent on there. I can run the Session Manager component, and this will give me an interactive session to that instance or to those groups of instance. More powerful features, I can actually use automation and use run commands and actually script out a whole bunch of shell scripts or PowerShell or whatever I want to do. And I can actually check in these scripts into source control and only allow certain people or certain version controlled locations to execute on those. So this is tying in with the best practice of keeping people away from data. And it means it significantly reduces that human error. Like how many times have you logged into an instance or a server and made a mistake? And even if you've got something pre-approved, copy and paste, fumbling around, you're going to make a mistake. So this is the best way to do it. Systems Manager also has built-in patch management as well. So we can configure patch management and automate the patching of that. I wonder what happens if I click patch now on a new account. There we go, scan and install. Yep, I'm just going to reboot. It's non-prod. Patch all, log storage. Yeah, wow, cool. It does what it does what it says on the box.
Yeah, Ben, when you are saying the system manager is available out of the box, you mean the Amazon AMIs have it out of the box, right?
Yes, the Amazon AMIs and some others, I believe, have it out of the box, but otherwise you can easily create your own images that include that.
I think there's a step-by-step instruction to install the agent on your special images if you want to.
Yes,
you don't necessarily need to just install that onto EC2 either. Like that can run on premise as well, can't it?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, exactly. Yep, that is a good point. So Systems Manager supports, off cloud or on other cloud stuff.
I have it for my Raspberry Pis, so I can SSH in, connect in, and run whenever I need to on my Raspberry Pis as well.
Yep. I run the CloudWatch logs on my, I use Orange Pis because they've got built-in flash, so it doesn't wear out the SD cards. But yeah, I run the CloudWatch logs of them, and then I have filters for certain errors. And then I have like a Slack alert when that error occurs. I've just got to trigger through the Event Bridge service and triggers the Slack notification that I can go in and, well, I know what's going on there.
You guys have too much time in your hands.
No, I do it for playing around. I read it that it can be done, so I need to go and do it, right?
Yeah.
It keeps me sane. And here is the last part of that. So it's my Aurora DB cluster. It's actually a serverless Aurora MySQL, and this is what our WordPress is running on. The other thing it does, this magic CloudFormation template or series of CloudFormation templates, is it creates a secret in Secrets Manager for the database password. So instead of storing this database password in code, in this case, it just simply uses environment variable, and it will grab that password and WordPress will use it out of the environment variable on the instance, rather than hard coding it in the configuration, which we've all seen how many WordPress vulnerabilities there are. We don't want a database secret in a clear text config file. I just want to show you some of the resources that we've got available so you can do a screenshot. I reused my reInvent slide deck from last year, so apologies for that. So if you want to take a screenshot, otherwise we can share out these links. So these are the well-architected best practice resources. So the top one is our main landing page where you'll find links to all the content, also links to partners, We have the well-architected tool that you can run yourself in the console. And you can review your architecture, review your workloads against those best practices. We also have the labs that I've shown you and pre-packaged AWS solutions there too. And I'll put up my socials there. Feel free to follow on Twitter or connect with me on LinkedIn, of course. And sometimes I post useful things, not too much ranting. And then I'll go back. I'll go back and finish off. I just want to capture anyone that's going to leave abruptly. You can't hear my stomach turning over yet, so I think we're good.
It was good performance. We still have 49 people, so it's quite good. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Oh, I'll plug my own personal blog post. So if in the past, I've spent many months creating AWS official blog posts that have to go through a very rigorous process. And I thought it was better use of my time in spending 10 minutes and no review process to do my own personal blog. So you can go and check it out. My latest is on protecting S3 data from ransomware. And that comes from things that I've seen out there on the interwebs.
Brilliant. So
on Twitch. Cool.
Yeah, Andre is teasing Paul, I believe now.
Cool, that's good.
Very, very good call out. That is a good Twitch stream, actually.
It is, yes. I watched it and I can vouch for it.
And Ben, you're like our type of person, because you did it because you could, right? Like you saw it.
Exactly.
I think I could do that.
Yeah.
And interesting, like I was really not aware of the orange pie, so I quickly looked that up, and that's like the main thing that goes wrong with my pies is the slowness of the SD cards, or the failure of the SD cards.
Yeah, so I reckon my orange pie is going like over 2 years now, and yeah, it hasn't skipped a beat. You know, I've short-circuited, I've done all sorts of stuff, and it's still going well.
Yeah, my pie dies very quickly when I short-circuit some of those pins. It's just incredible. Yep. I'll look for the orange pie. All right. Wow. More than security, we have shared a lot of stuff today. Thank you very much, Ben. Paul, would you like to take over? And then
so as Dahani, as we mentioned earlier, we do have for anybody that does do a presentation, we have a JetBrains license for any JetBrains product you want. And a t-shirt, so a special t-shirt that AWS have made for us. So we have one for each presenter through the year. But we also have a door prize. So we have a door prize as well, which is another one of those JetBrains licenses. For anybody that hasn't used JetBrains, that's for like maybe IntelliJ or PyCharm or what is it, Data Gripper, you know, the database exploring tool, which is quite good as well. So whichever one you specifically like that. If you're a .NET developer, there's Rider. So you get to pick one of those products and use it. And so to do the door prize, we'll do like what we've done, and it's worked pretty well in the past. We'll just do I'll use a random site generator to generate a random number. And while I'm typing that up, hold on a second. And what I'll do is I'll check how many people are here, and it's 40. So there's 47 people. So I'll use a random generator between 1 and 47, and then it will be that many countdown from the top of the screen. So what I'll do is I'll quickly just share a window. Yep. So here we go. Just so that people can see that it's all completely legit. So random number generator between 1 and 47. I'll click generate. That's 44.
That's me.
Now, so if we've got 47, we'll count 3 up from the bottom, and it's T. So whoever the person T is, if you whisper myself or
are you sure you're showing all?
Sorry.
Are you showing all images? Because you might have paged. Are you showing all 47 on your screen before you count up?
Yes. So there was 47 participants at that time.
Yes.
I scrolled to the very bottom of the list,
Cool.
and I counted 3 up, which was T. So if T messages me or contacts me, and if they don't get to it through Zoom today, just go ahead and reach out on the Slack channel or via LinkedIn, and we'll get you that license. And for Ben, thank you so much for that presentation. There was a bunch of things there that I hadn't seen before, and I work at AWS. So it's a really good walkthrough. And these are the tools. Like I think what you said earlier, when you say it's that single place where you go and look at everything all together, and that's what's really important. So there's so many tools that you can turn on and off, but bringing it all together and aggregating it all up is the something that's we want one place to go and look at where things are going on and going wrong.
Yeah, and it's just knowing where to go, right? So I was with a startup last week, and they're like, where do we start? And I was like, Security Hub. Let's just go and turn it on and see where we are. And they're like, wow, we never knew what this service was. They're just focused on their serverless application, and they've only got 2 people working at the startup, so they don't have time to go out and do everything else. So yeah.
So, and Ben, I'll get you your keys as well. So that's a personal copy as well.
Oh, cool.
And the T-shirt as well, because everybody loves swag.
Yes, I'm actually wearing my favorite swag. So it's my WellArchitected.
Oh, that's nice.
My WellArchitected. It's actually a proper jumper, like what should we call it? Yeah, North Face jumper that we had.
Oh, nice. Oh, that's a really nice quality one. Yeah, I've got my reInvent 2020 hoodie.
I never got one.
Yeah.
Presented.
I need one too. Somebody one day will give me a swag. But thank you very much, Ben. I would like to extend our invitation. If you want to contribute to the meetup, please do reach out to us. One of many ways is writing a blog, but there are many other ways if you want to contribute. Join our Slack channel. We try to keep it up to date. And if you want to look at our previous workshops, all of them has their GitHub repositories, and some of them has videos. So yeah, come back next time and tell your friends. Thank you very much, Ben. And I'd like to thank Paul and Milan as a representation from the volunteers committee now. And have a good night, everyone.
Yeah. Thanks, Dahan. Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Ben.
Yeah,
Awesome.
thank you.
Thanks, Ben and team. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.